This video is brought to you in collaboration with WoWhead.com. Hello everyone! It's time to cover the story of the last of the major Dragonflights. We're gonna be talking about the Bronze One with the leader Nosdormu.
Just in time.
Nosdormu the Timeless One was empowered by the Keepers and the Titans, after the, at the time, Proto-Dragons banded together to end the threat of Galakrond. His blessing came from Aman'Thul, High Father and leader of the Pantheon. Onto you is charged the great task of keeping the purity of time. Know that there is only one true timeline, though there are those who would have it otherwise. You must protect it. Without the truth of time as it is meant to unfold, more will be lost than you could possibly imagine. The fabric of reality will unravel, and it is a heavy task, the base of all tasks of this world, for nothing can transpire without time. Power over time itself. The past, the future, the present. Enough power to make anyone lose their heads. But to make sure that they fully realize that not even the Bronze Dragon aspect is beyond the effects of time, they also showed him the moment of his demise. Something that seemingly is not just reserved for their aspects. I can't say for certain that all the Bronze Dragons know the moment of demise is like a package deal, part of having their powers. Or if it was more of a, I got curious so I checked out my own timeline kind of deal. All I can say for certain is that the Bronze Dragon Chromie, they also checked out their death and knows exactly when they're supposed to die. That's why they recruited our aid when someone was trying to kill them before their supposed time. And compared to the domains of the other flights, Earth, life, nature, even magic, we got a solid understanding and concept of what's going on. But the domain of time, it's a bit more tricky. The fantasy concept, it has different rules and explanations across different media. You got multiple timelines, the butterfly effect, bootstrap paradoxes, or, wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff. A lot of things that you can apply to the time travel, and ultimately, considering that we are dealing with a fantasy concept, anything pretty much goes.
Time is a tangled web. Try not to dwell on all the loose ends.
Taking it into Warcraft, we know that the sacred charge of the Bronze Dragonflight, it's to keep the timeline pure. One timeline, which has certain events that need to happen. Immediately, there's already a bit of a problem, as the timeline has been altered. There is a timeline in which the War of the Ancients played out, and the Night Elves, they knew nothing about the Orc Broxigar. Then we would see Broxigar, together with Coriastras and Ronin, swept up, taken back in time, 10,000 years to the War of the Ancients. This time tornado sweeping them away, that was Nosdormu's desperate attempt to get some sort of help, as he had gotten himself trapped trying to investigate some unknown time anomaly. All he could do was hold the fabric of the timeways together and just hope that Broxigar and crew could see the war through. And they did, but not without playing an active role within the war. They would change moments that without them being there would have never existed, like a Ronin that guided Illidan through the ways of magic, or Krasus saving a couple of the Blue Dragon eggs, saving Malfurion's life. There are, at the very least, two versions as to how the War of the Ancients played out, and yet Nosdormu, he's perfectly fine with that. How does that fit into keeping the timeline pure? And I guess that an explanation could be that the details don't really matter as long as these major key point events still play out as they should. Despite some changes that they made, some knowledge that was revealed before its time, Deathwing was still defeated, the Dragon Soul locked away, the Legions invasion was still prevented, and Azeroth still split apart. After which, Nosdormu would become obsessed with unraveling the mystery as to what or who had been responsible for the anomaly and more. After sending our heroes back home, he disappeared into the timeways and would not be seen again for many years.
This was not our destiny. Times change.
The concept of alternate realities and alternate timelines, they exist as well, but they don't exist forever. I'm gonna lean heavy here on the Chronicles to explain how exactly that works. In all known realms of the cosmos, time flows forwards, ever forwards. Chaotic energies in places like the Twisting Nether, they can affect how quickly it flows, but it only flows forwards. Once an event happens, it cannot be changed. These events and choices, made up of all creatures and forces in the cosmos, they join together like a river, sharing the same reality. Different choices and different possibilities naturally spin off the river of time like small creeks and estuaries, ebbing and flowing for a while. If these shades of what could have been are left alone, they will eventually dissipate into nothing. But if efforts are made to preserve them or alter them, they can indeed remain in existence indefinitely. They can even be made to feed back into the main river. Dead creatures can seemingly live again, and the past or future may literally come back to haunt you. Rough translation: alternate realities, staying or disappearing. It kinda depends on what they need for the story, and if someone goes through the trouble of preserving them. Having Nosdormu investigate the source behind the anomaly, trying to figure out what was going on, it had him get stuck in time again. He would be saved by former War Chief Thrall on a quest given to him by Ysera. The rescue mission had Thrall go through these different time periods, even some timelines that would never be, like the one in which he died as a baby, and so he never rose up to form the Hordes. Realities like that would eventually disappear, whereas the alternate reality which we visited during Warlords of Draenor, that one has been greatly altered, even reconnected to our timeline to recruit the Magar orcs into the Hordes. That timeline seems to be a permanent one. With our first trip, it had us go not just into an alternate reality, we also traveled back in time around the formation of the first Hordes. And then the second trip that had the timelines line up. 35 years, give or take, they passed, which has not been the greatest time for this reality. Yrl and the Draenei, they've started a holy crusade against the orcs, which is a storyline hopefully one day will be further explored.
Draenor has fallen, but we will make a new home on Azeroth. Your enemies are now our enemies.
After Thrall saved Nosdormu, the Bronze Aspect revealed what he had learned by deep diving into the Timeways. That pretty much all the horrible events against Dragonflight and Azeroth, they've been orchestrated by the Old Gods. Even worse, he would become corrupted and form the infinite Dragonflight, again by the hands of the Old Gods. Those revelations were soon enough revealed to actually be true. Once Thrall had helped out the Aspects, took up the role as surrogate aspect of Earth in the war against Deathwing during the Cataclysm, we came up with a crazy idea to stop Deathwing once and for all. We were going to steal his creation, the Dragon Soul, out of the timeline, bring it back to ours, then empower it further with the might of the Aspects, and turn it against his creator. Only problem is that someone has locked up the Timeways and made it so that no time travel was possible except to one specific spot, the so-called end time, one of an infinite number of potential outcomes, in which we actually failed to stop the Outer Twilight, and Deathwing actually won, completing the Old Gods' plans and putting them back as rulers upon Azeroth. As a reward, they impaled the mighty Black Behemoth upon Wormrest Temple. Not the best timeline to find yourself in, but what entity could possibly have the power to prevent Nosdormu from cruising the Timeways? Well, that would be Nosdormu himself, in the form of Moruzand. Nosdormu was tricked by the Old Gods into trying to subvert his mortality. That one thing that he was absolutely not allowed to do. As a result, Nosdormu shattered the Timeways, created the infinite Dragonflight, jeopardizing the very future of Azeroth.
You crawl unwitting like a blind, writhing worm towards endless madness and despair. I have witnessed the true end time. This is a blessing you simply cannot comprehend.
Has Moruzand really seen a timeline worse than the one in which the Old Gods won? Or is this more Old God trickery? Uncertain, but the fate of Nosdormu is set in stone. By his own admission, this is his moment of demise.
You know not what you have done, Amenthul. What I... At last it has come to pass. The moment of my demise. The loop is closed. My future self will cause no more harm. Still, in time, I will fall to madness. And you, heroes, will vanquish me. The cycle will repeat.
Which is quite the interesting moment. He wasn't allowed to prevent his death, but doing exactly that is what creates Moruzand. It creates the moment of his death. Him becoming Moruzand closes the loop. So while it might be Old God trickery that pushes him over the edge, There might be some form of corruption. It could also very well be an active choice to keep the timeline pure. Interesting loop going on here, and time is going to tell. Let's not forget that this is lore that is set up back in the Cataclysm. Things are subject to change. Either way, Moruzant is slain. The timeways are opened up again. We retrieve the Dragon Soul at the end of the War of the Ancients.
It is time. I will expend everything to bind every thread, here, now, around the Dragon Soul. What comes to pass will never be undone.
Taking it back to our time period. We use it to defeat Deathwing, to which the dragon expects they give up a huge chunk of their powers, and must now see the world through mortal eyes. With his powers gone, the Dragon Soul has returned to its place in time. Yet it still left the domain of time to be guarded, and similar to how Ysera has worked together with the Druids, the Bronze Dragons would ally themselves with mortals of the world. Not the first time that they've looked favorable upon mortals. Once they came into contact with Zarantar, the Witness, a Tauren druid, one of the first Tauren druids, taught by Shando Cenarius himself, before the Legion, before the Sundering, which means over 10,000 years ago. He wandered his natural life in search of knowledge, seeking more wonder and meeting more strange and mysterious races than any of his people before him, traveling across the length and breadth of ancient Kalimdor until there was no more to see. No new lands across the horizon. Yet, there was still so much that he did not know, as he felt his final journey approaching, and he wept for the things he would never know. That's when they found him, the bronze Dragonflight, snatching him from the brink of death. The Master Nosdormu wanted him to continue his hunt, and they gave him, just as they'd given to the Night Elves through their blessing of Nordrassil, they gave him immortality as a watcher, tasked to bear to witness the history of Azeroth. Then, the mortals on the Timeless Isle, we would find the faction of Time Walkers. You got yourself the Historians, the Watchers, the Weavers, and the Wardens. All of them working together with the Keepers of Time. Even mortals outside of their faction were invited to help out, help investigate this mysterious Timeless Isle. And as they do, they also gather power for the bronze dragon Kairos Dormu. Kairos has invented a special device called the Vision of Time, which he asked us to charge up. As we do, he's able to show us some interesting visions. Some of them are part of the past, some of them are part of the future, and some are futures that might be if we fail. One vision doesn't seem to be connected though, the death of Storidormi, Nosdormu's mate, which hasn't played out in any way, shape or form. Instead, Kairos would thank us for our efforts and use his Vision of Time during the trial of Garrosh Hellscream. Show visions of the past for all present to support the court proceedings, while his true goal it was to get Garrosh out of there. Use the Vision of Time to send them over to alternate Draenor. The motivation behind this, the motivation of Kairos and Rephion working together. As far as I know, that's only truly been explained during the Legion beta. This dialogue that they later removed, but it does make sense. They wanted Hellscream to meet up with his father, form a new horde, to then have that horde add its numbers to Azeroth's defenders, have them stand with us against the Burning Legion. Instead, Garrosh shoved the shard of the Vision of Time through Kairos' throat and went about to do his own thing. He formed the Iron Horde not in the defense of Azeroth, but rather to conquer it. We'd come across the spirits, the echo of Kairos, and a lot of what he was saying, it was all hinting at the birth of the infinite Dragonflight.
Kairos, what did you want? Why did you need an army?
Not just one. An infinite number of armies, across an infinite number of worlds. I would be infinite!
The Infinite Dragons had even shown up to attack the trial, create enough turmoil for Kairos and Garrosh to make a clean escape. So there was definitely some sort of connection between them. Sadly, this was a story that they never continued, and while we have some idea about who their leader Moruzant is, why they created the Infinite Flights, we don't know exactly what they want to accomplish. They've shown up to mess around with critical moments on the timeline. They've tried to stop Medivh from opening up the Dark Portal. They tried to stop Thrall from escaping Durnhold. They tried to stop Arthas from going to Northrend. Somewhere along the way, one of them also decided to become a pirate. But what does it mean? Why did they want to alter these moments? What is the motive behind it? that is still a subject to be explored. One theory, that would be to try and serve their old gods' masters, by stopping the Horde from coming to Azeroth or being formed. The war in Silithus against Cthulhu, that would have looked entirely different. Same could be said for Yogg-Saron and Northrend. If the Lich King had been there to draw attention to the place, then Yogg-Saron's actions within Ulduar, they might have gone unnoticed as well. Just a theory though. We might very well be looking for patterns that no longer exist. Yet I would be very surprised if Dragonflight isn't going to massively deal with the whole Infinite Dragonflight storyline. And honestly, I can't wait to learn more.
My story is already written, but yours, and that of all Drakthir, is only beginning to unfold.
That, so far, is the major idea behind the Bronze Dragons and their powers over time. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the more known members and what they've meant for the story.
Is it time already?
Sodidormi, as I mentioned earlier, also spelled as Sadidormi. That is the prime consort of Nosdormu, and she often represents the Master of Time whenever he's occupied elsewhere. A good example, that was him being stuck in that time anomaly, while they still needed to empower the Dragon Soul. For moments like this, they had an hourglass, made up what appeared to be of pure golden sunlight. Within it, glittering bronze sands flowed not down but up. And when the top filled, they then descended, only to begin their upward march once more. These sands were part of Nosdormu, set separate by him for urgent need by his flight. In Nosdormu's name, they added his strength to the disc. You kinda gotta wonder how a walking spoiler like Nosdormu, how he looks upon these events.
Before you is the cache of the aspects. Take from it what you will, for you have more than earned the right.
Although you may want to hurry.
He has the power over time after all. He knows things before they're going to happen. And yet, for the sake of the timeline, he has to let them happen anyways. That has to be a great burden. Yet at the same time, they also make use of clouding his vision or weakening his powers. Being able to prophesy something, it doesn't always mean that you're right in the story of Warcraft. We could look at the visions that were given to Velen about young Anduin, or Queen Alyssant, leader of the Nightborn, who saw no other future for their people except one ally to the Legion. We proved them wrong on that account. And sometimes Nosdormu can't be sure about what's to come. Or he simply has to keep his mouth shut and just let it happen.
Time holds many visions. Some will prove true. Others should be taken with a grain of sand.
From the union of Nosdormu and assumed to be Sodidormi, there came a child known as Anachronos, heir of Nosdormu. Throughout the history of the Dragonflights, you've heard about heroic dragons flying into Ankiraj to hold the line, give Azeroth a chance to lock the threat of Cthulhu. It was the Bronze who was asked by the elves to help first, and they had refused. What were these mortal quarrels to the might of the dragons? That mindset quickly changed though, when Cthulhu's forces dared to strike at the Caverns of Time. Now the elves had the support of the dragons on their side. Together, they managed to set up the Scarab Wall with a gong in place. If there was ever need for mortals to get past the wall, all they had to do was strike the gong with the Scepter of the Shifting Sands. But Stackhelm, after losing his son in the war, he wanted nothing to do with any of it. He shattered the scepter, only for heroes to reforge it during Classic and venture into Ankiraj once more.
Listen well, mortal. Countless threads are woven to create the fabric of our timeline. As the Wardens of Time, we of the Bronze Dragonflight observe their infinite combinations. When disruptions are detected by our watchers, we are charged with their repair. A recent event, obscured by powerful magics, remains masked even to me. But the catastrophic outcome is plain. Azeroth will burn. While the details remain shrouded from our view, one thing we have gleaned is that the fate of Azeroth hinges on the deeds of a mortal. Are you the mortal on which so much depends? Only time will tell.
Anachronos would aid mortals again for the sake of time and Azeroth. It was them who sent us on a mission to uncover that treachery within the Blue Dragonflight and ultimately forge Terragosa's rest, as well as help Eitric and the Horde recruit the Magar orcs into their ranks, helping out the mortals of the world. And there is another bronze that loves to hang out with us. Chromie or Chronormu. They're probably the most well-known bronze dragon out there, and their naming scheme has been a topic of discussion for quite a few years. You might have already picked up on how the different flights have different naming schemes for their males and their females. In the case of the bronze, we've got Ormu, which is the ending for males, like Einosdormu, while Urmi is the ending for the females, like Soridormi. Yet Chromie, they use a female visage, which they go into much more detail with in the story Visage Day as part of Folks and Fairy Tales of Azeroth, but now they also published it for free on the WoW website. In it, we read about Chromie's journey in choosing their visage, talking with other dragons, find out their motivations for how they appear. For example, an Onyxia chose her female human visage as humans, while not the strongest nor the smartest, they are the most relentless. Heed my wisdom, little one. You are a dragon, a hunter, with claws for tearing and teeth for killing. No visage will change that. And just like your other gifts, your visage will be a means to take what you want. That's not how Chronormu wanted to be seen by mortals, though. On the other hand, there was a Caligos, who had chosen his visage as he wanted to come across as a friend, a peer, and someone they could trust. Ultimately, our Chromie decided on the form of a female gnome, because they felt that that visage suited them best. And as our gnome buddy, she has popped up in our timeline a fair few times, often quite confused if they're early or if they're late, dealing with the threats to time at Enderhall, joining us on our adventures through time in the Caverns of Time. Even finding time to support the mortal efforts during the trial of Garrosh, and journey with them to alternate Draenor to make up for the damage caused by Kairos. As I mentioned earlier, someone has tried to kill our Chromie before they're supposed to die. We still don't have a clear answer as to who or what wanted to kill her. Perhaps, like the story of the Infinites, something that we could explore further within Dragonflight.
I have a sneaking suspicion that the enemy is planning a cross-synchronous attack. Why else would they be using chrono shards, right? I can tell you're a little foggy on what that means. Basically, they're attacking me at multiple points in time simultaneously. These guys really know what they're doing. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a bronze dragon on their side.
Exciting stuff on the horizon. But for now, I think you're up to speed on the major story behind the Bronze Dragonflight and their effects upon the world. Can't wait to see what the future's going to bring. But for now, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Say that you want more details, or just read up on all the things that we talked about today, then check out the related WoW article in the description down below. As for me, subscribe and ring that bell to be notified. Leave a like if you had a good time. And until next time, see ya!